Welcome to the Credit Edge. Ideas on time and working for a living. Let's get started.
Today, we're taking a step back. We're intentionally setting aside the usual noise, the market chatter, the quarterly reports.
All the distractions.
All the distractions. Our focus is going to be something much more personal, much more grounded. We're looking at the true cost of obligation.
And not measured in the ways we usually think, not in percentages or basis points.
Exactly. We're talking about the cost measured in the single most valuable thing you have, your time.
Which is finite. It's the one thing you can't get more of.
That's the core of it. We have this incredible source material for today's deep dive. It lays out a philosophy, something we're calling the credit edge, and it demands that we look at debt differently.
Right, not as a math problem.
Not at all. It's a lens, a lens to look at our own autonomy, our energy, and maybe most importantly, our capacity for peace.
And it's not abstract. This isn't theory for the sake of theory. The source really grounds this in the lived reality of, for most of us, trading our hours for a wage.
Absolutely. And to really anchor our entire conversation today, I want to start with a quote from this reflection. It's quiet, but it's profound. It says, "Stillness is one of the hardest things to practice in a world that never stops moving."
Wow. Yeah. That one line just completely recalibrates the entire conversation, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we're taught that financial health is all about motion. It's about earning, spending, investing, managing, constant activity.
The hustle.
The hustle, right. But if you don't have that stillness, if you can't just stop for a minute, you lose all perspective. You can't actually understand the agreements you've made.
You're just reacting, always reacting.
Exactly. You're always moving. So you never have a chance to step back and assess the fundamental nature of the obligations you've taken on.
And that assessment, that's really our mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We're going to look at debt through the definition the source gives us. And it's a powerful one. It calls debt a quiet agreement between time and obligation.
I love that phrasing, a quiet agreement.
It's so true. It's an agreement that usually happens quietly, right? Often when you're in a rush, you're distracted by some immediate crisis or need.
Yeah, the car breaks down, the medical bill arrives. It's not a moment of calm, strategic thinking. It's a moment of pressure.
And that's when you sign on the dotted line. So we need to get past that, that simple surface level math that finance always throws at us.
The whole borrow now, repay later story.
That's the one. What we have to analyze, what the source demands we analyze, is the transfer of control that's happening just beneath the numbers.
The hidden part of the transaction.
Yes. This is about seeing that these big financial concepts, credit, compounding, all of that, they aren't just numbers on a page. They're actually metaphors for your life.
For the daily grind.
For the daily grind. The painful shift changes, the anxiety you feel when the bills are due, that constant low-level friction of just trying to get by.
For anyone who has to clock in, who trades their hours for a paycheck, these concepts aren't abstract at all. They map directly onto, missed family dinners, dreams you have to put on hold.
The choices you make when you feel like your back is against the wall. We're not just looking at a balance sheet today. We're trying to understand the quality of life that the balance sheet dictates.
Okay, so let's dive into the foundation of this credit edge philosophy. It starts with something pretty radical. It completely redefines what wealth even is.
Yeah, it throws out the old definition.
It does. The philosophy states it so clearly. Money is stored time. True wealth is control over your hours, peace, and choices.
And it's a game changer of a starting point. It immediately forces a kind of moral calculus onto what we think of as finance.
A moral calculus, they signed to that.
Well, if you accept that wealth is really just ownership of your own hours, then every single decision you make that involves money has to be looked at through that filter first.
Not what will this get me, but what will this cost me in time? Exactly. What is the impact on my time? And this is why the source is so insistent on this one point. Time accounting is moral accounting.
It shifts the entire goal.
Yeah.
You're no longer trying to maximize your return on capital. You're trying to maximize your return on life.
Your return on life. That's it. Which brings us, right to the first big principle.
Principle 1, time is the only real currency.
And the logic here is, like you said earlier, it's simple, but it's incredibly powerful. The source explains that money is just stored labor.
Right. It's the hours you have already worked, already spent, just packaged up into something you can trade. A dollar bill is a receipt for your past time.
A receipt for your past time. I like that. So if money is your past labor, then when you take on debt, what are you doing? You're not borrowing a dollar.
You're borrowing time.
You are borrowing the future hours of labor that you will need to perform to earn those dollars back, plus interest. The source is so unambiguous about this. It says debt borrows time.
It's a claim against your future self. It's a contract that legally compels the person you will be in 5, 10, 20 years.
A person who will be older, maybe more tired.
Exactly. It compels that future you to show up, to do the work, to pay for an obligation that you, your past self, made today.
You're trading future freedom for present comfort. Or, let's be honest, more often it's for present necessity.
And that framing, that temporal exchange, it just blows open the huge difference between how, say, a strategic investor uses debt and how a regular working person encounters it.
Oh, it's a completely different universe. And the source is very specific here. It says this is for us, the working class people who trade hours for wages, not capital.
That distinction is everything. It's crucial because when someone with a lot of capital takes on debt, they're usually doing it as leverage, right?
Right. Strategic leverage. They're buying an asset, a building, a company, something that's going to generate income for them without them having to work for it. Their capital is working while they rest.
But for most people, that is not the story of their debt. Not even close.
No. The source points out that for most of us, debt is rarely some sophisticated play to build an empire. It's survival.
It's survival. A way to cover what income cannot. A way to manage emergencies that come without warning. That's straight from the source.
It's just bridging the gap between a paycheck that feels more and more fragile and the cost of just existing, which keeps going up.
So it completely shifts the function of debt. It's no longer a tool for growth. It becomes this burden of necessity.
You're not getting ahead. You're just trying not to fall further behind.
Right. Your car breaks down. You need it to get to the job that pays for the car. You have to finance the repair. So you're now compounding your future obligation, your future borrowed time, just to maintain the status quo.
It's a liquidity trap, a tragedy of low liquidity.
And it's a cycle.
And to really feel the weight of this, I think it's worth touching on the historical context the source brings up. Because debt wasn't always this cold, impersonal contract.
No, it started as something human, relational. The source says long before banks, debt was a promise. A way to balance trust, to bridge need. It was a connection between two people, based on mutual accountability, a promise.
But then the source notes this crucial evolution. It says, over time, trust became interest. Human connection turned into contract.
And that's the moment everything changes. Once it's a formal contract, the extraction of your time becomes standardized. It becomes impersonal. It's governed by a system that doesn't care about you or your story.
The emotional weight of that human promise gets replaced by the relentless, cold, calculating mechanism of interest. And that's the world we live in now.
Okay, so now we're getting into, I think, the real heavy lifting of this deep dive, unpacking the exchange. If we're going to accept this idea that time is our real currency, we have to be honest about the hidden price of borrowing.
And this is where the reflection gets. It gets very personal. It's not abstract anymore.
Not at all. The source material gives us this really stark analysis. It says, behind every dollar borrowed is an hour already spent, an hour owed before you even live it.
Just let that sink in for a second. An hour owed before you even live it.
It's chilling when you think about it that way. You look at a credit card statement and you see the numbers, right? Principal, interest. But this philosophy, the credit edge, it asks you to see something else.
The phantom liability.
The phantom liability. The hours of your future life that are already legally spoken for. They belong to someone else. You are required by law to generate the energy, to do the labor, to spend your finite lifespan covering that consumption from your past.
And the cost isn't just financial. It's not just about the hours you'll have to work. The source is really insistent on this point. It says debt is also emotional, social, and personal.
How so?
Well, it acts as a mirror of how we borrow from ourselves, our energy, our peace, our future hours. It's not just an external obligation to a bank. It becomes an internal one.
So this is where that time accounting is moral accounting idea really comes into play.
Exactly. The financial liability, you can quantify that. It's on the statement. But the emotional liability, you can't put a number on it, but it often has way more power over your life than the minimum payment does.
Because the anxiety doesn't just show up on the due date.
No, it's immediate. And it's pervasive. It's with you all the time.
It's that chronic, that low-grade stress that's always humming in the background. And it affects every decision you make.
Absolutely. It's why you say yes to the overtime that you know is going to burn you out. It's why you don't have that difficult but necessary conversation with your boss.
Because you can't risk the stability of that paycheck. It's become everything. The obligation has to be fed.
And this is how it profoundly shapes your behavior. It's not just a financial instrument. It's a tool of social control in a way. The system dictates our behavior through debt.
The source has some powerful language on this. It says, debt teaches caution when courage is needed. Obedience when creativity might save us.
It fundamentally rewires your psychological operating system. It changes your core concepts about the world. Yeah. Let's really explore that shift. I think that's a critical point. If you're carrying a heavy weight of obligation, the mortgage, the car payment, the credit cards, the psychological barrier to making a big change in your life becomes enormous.
It becomes almost insurmountable. Thinking about starting a business, moving to a new city for a better opportunity, those things feel less like opportunities and more like terrifying risks.
Because the source says in this state, risk becomes fear. Security becomes dependence.
That's it. Risk is no longer a calculated investment. It's the gut-wrenching terror of missing a payment and triggering that downward spiral of fees and penalties.
And what about security? How does that change?
Security gets completely redefined. It's no longer about internal confidence or skills you have or assets you've built. Security becomes pure dependence on the predictable, even if it's miserable.
The familiar paycheck.
The familiar paycheck. No matter how much you hate the job, that direct deposit is your security. The debt acts as this invisible leash, keeping you right where you are. So it molds you. It molds you into a compliant worker, someone who has to put the needs of the creditor, that monthly minimum ahead of your own ambitions, your own health, even your own necessary rebellion against a bad situation.
Your liability demands your obedience. Think about creativity. True creativity, the kind of problem solving that leads to breakthroughs, it requires mental space. It requires optionality.
And debt just erodes both of those things.
It strips them away. If you have a brilliant idea for an app or a service that might change your life, but it requires, say, 6 months of ramen noodles and no income to build it, the debt load makes that impossible.
The opportunity is right there, but you can't access it.
You can't. You have to stay compliant. You have to keep feeding the immediate needs of the creditor.
Okay, so this brings us to a really important question. It's one the source material sort of encourages us to ask, to make this crystal clear for anyone listening. What is really being traded here when debt teaches you obedience instead of creativity? And maybe more concretely, how many hours of your mental energy does this cost you over the course of a year?
The first part is easy. What's being traded is sovereignty. Your personal sovereignty.
Your ability to steer your own ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are trading your potential for exponential growth, that big creative leap for linear, predictable, guaranteed compliance. You're sacrificing the freedom of the uncommon path for the supposed safety of the familiar rut.
The big leap for the long trudge.
The big leap for the long trudge. That's a perfect way to put it. Now, for the second part, the mental cost. This is not about the 5 minutes it takes to pay a bill online.
No, this is about the cognitive load, the bandwidth it takes up in your brain 24/7.
Precisely. And if we actually try to quantify this,
Right.
Let's just run the numbers. Let's be conservative and say you lose, 90 minutes a day to financial anxiety.
That seems plausible. The time you spend worrying in the car, lying awake at night, the way it distracts you from being present with your family.
Right. That internal monologue of worst-case scenarios, the constant mental math of tracking balances and due dates. So 90 minutes a day. That's 10.5 hours a week. Now multiply that by 52 weeks in a year. You get 546 hours.
546 hours.
546 hours. If you divide that by a standard 40-hour work week, that's almost 14 full work weeks.
14 weeks.
13 weeks of your productive mental energy every single year dedicated purely to the emotional drag and anxiety of your obligations. Not to solving problems, not to learning, not to creating, to worrying.
That is staggering. That's the real non-financial price.
That's the liability that never, ever shows up on the statement. But you feel it. You feel it every single day. 14 weeks of your mind dedicated not to growth, but to fear.
And that immense cost, that drain on our collective energy, that brings us right to the systems that are built on this very design, which is principle 2. Systems profit from compliance, and the source is, it's really unflinching on this point. It argues that pretty much every large-scale economic and social structure we have depends on debt.
For a very simple reason.
A very simple reason. It keeps people working, producing, showing up.
The system itself is indifferent. It doesn't care if you're happy or fulfilled, but it is incredibly efficient at one thing: maintaining a steady, compliant flow of labor.
And debt is the perfect mechanism for that. It ensures you can't afford the luxury of stopping to reassess. You can't take a gap year to find yourself. You can't even take a gap month to gain some clarity.
You have to show up. You must show up, because that liability clock is always, always ticking.
So this is how debt creates what the source calls the illusion of progress, while binding your future to someone else's terms.
That's such a key phrase, the illusion of progress.
It feels like you're moving forward, right?
Yeah.
You got the degree, you bought the house, you have the new car, you're checking all the boxes.
But if every single one of those milestones was financed by borrowing your future time, then your life is fundamentally governed by the terms set by your creditor.
You are progressing, but on their calendar, not yours.
And this systemic dependence is why the source places so much emphasis on understanding the two positions in debt. It says this awareness is the absolute first step toward reclaiming any kind of autonomy.
Let's spend some real time on this, because this is the core structural insight of the whole credit edge philosophy. These two positions.
Okay, the source lays it out very, very simply. In every debt, there are two positions. One borrows time, the other lends it. One works to repay, the other's money works while they rest.
It just cuts through all the jargon, all the complexity. That's it.
That's it. If you have a credit card balance, a student loan, a car payment, you are in the position of the borrower of time. You are the one who is required to exchange your future hours of labor to pay that back.
Your body has to show up to work.
Yes. Your physical energy must be expended. Meanwhile, the lender, the person or the institution on the other side of that contract, their capital, their stored time, is working for them.
They are collecting interest and principal from you without spending their own immediate hours. Their money compounds while they sleep.
And the source is very firm here, which I think is important. It says, this is not moral failing, it is design.
It's not about you being a bad person. It's about the structure of the system you're participating in.
Exactly. The system is designed to reward the lender of time and to leverage the borrower of time. It's just how the machine is built.
And we're raised in a culture that actually praises this. We're taught that meeting our obligations is a virtue, that repaying our debts is a moral good.
Of course. The system praises the worker who never misses a payment, even when the hours keep disappearing. But you have to ask why it praises that behavior.
It's functional.
It's functional. That praise ensures your compliance, which is necessary to keep the system generating returns for the lending side. We are taught the value of sacrifice long before we are ever taught the value of sovereignty.
That's a huge point. Sacrifice is praised, but sovereignty is obscured. It means the knowledge of how to actually switch positions, how to become a lender of time instead of a borrower. That knowledge isn't widely taught.
No, it's often hidden, or it's passed down quietly within families that already occupy that position, which leads to this central defining question that the system's compliance mechanism raises.
Right. Who is on the other side of this trade? Who's actually benefiting from the lending of all this time? And why is owning your own hours sovereignty so rarely taught, while sacrifice is praised from every rooftop?
Well, the person on the other side is simply the one who has optionality. They have capital, they benefit from the predictability of your labor. Your lack of options guarantees their return.
So my financial constraints, my need to show up every day, that guarantees their reliable income stream.
Precisely. And sovereignty, the actual ability to own your hours and choose your own path, that is a threat to a system that needs constant compliant participation.
If everyone suddenly achieved total sovereignty, who would reliably staff the 247 machine of the global economy?
Exactly. Sacrifice is praised because sacrifice is the lubricant for that machine. When you praise sacrifice, you instill this idea that denying your own needs for the sake of the system is the highest moral good, and that ensures people keep showing up.
Let's make this more concrete. Think about the banking system. When you put your money in a savings account, you are, in a very small way, a lender of time to the bank.
A very, very small way, yes.
But the bank then takes your deposited time, and through fractional reserve lending, it lends that time out to maybe 10 different borrowers at a much higher rate. The design itself is built to maximize returns for the lender position.
Or just think about the spread between a credit card's interest rate and a high-yield savings account's rate.
It's enormous.
The person using the credit card is borrowing time at, 25%? A huge price to pay. The person with the savings is lending time and getting maybe 5%. The system depends entirely on that difference. It depends on the urgent need of the borrower.
The person who needs the money now pays a massive premium to the person who can afford to wait. That urgency is directly tied to the scarcity of their time.
And understanding that architecture, that design, is the only way out. Which brings us to the response.
Principle 3, awareness is reclamation. If this whole architecture is built on our distraction, on our compliance, then just seeing it clearly is the first act of freedom.
The source calls awareness the knowledge that separates the free from the indebted. Not luck, not income, awareness. It's the great separator, because once you see the mechanics, you can't unsee them.
And this is where we have to get nuanced about debt itself. The tool isn't inherently evil.
No, it's a mechanism. The source says, used with understanding, it becomes leverage, a bridge that builds empires. Used without awareness, it becomes a trap that erodes them.
So the difference is not in the tool, but in the hand that wields it.
Exactly. A high-interest loan is a trap if you're using it to cover your rent. But that same financial structure could be powerful leverage for a savvy real estate investor who knows they can generate a 40% return on that capital. Awareness is what lets you know which game you're playing.
And developing that awareness forces you to confront what the source calls the quiet burden of obligation, the thing the system relies on.
And it grounds this so perfectly in our day-to-day lives. It's not an abstract feeling. It's that specific dread, that feeling of never being caught up that hits you on the one day you're supposed to rest.
It feels like another bill, another payment, another Sunday looking at statements while eating breakfast cold. That line is just, it's devastating because it's so true.
That feeling is the systemic anxiety that keeps us running on the hamster wheel. It's the physical, emotional manifestation of a life deferred.
What does it mean by a life deferred?
The reflection is really specific here. It says the real cost of repayment is not just the money leaving your account, it's all the things you put off. It is a life deferred.
So the vacation you don't take, the class you don't sign up for, the time you don't spend with your kids because you're working.
Exactly. The real cost is in the energy, opportunities missed, time never returned. The money, you could theoretically earn that back. But the hours you spent worrying, or the hours you spent at a second job instead of at your kid's baseball game, those are gone forever.
And the system thrives on that quiet burden. It depends on us being exhausted and distracted. The source is so blunt about it. Busy people make good customers.
If you're perpetually busy working 2 jobs, commuting an hour each way, managing all this debt anxiety, you have 0 time for critical thought. You have no bandwidth to learn a new high-value skill. Your energy is completely consumed by the immediate need to stay afloat.
Your distraction becomes the system's best defense. Stillness is a threat to the status quo.
It is. Which brings us to another one of those really challenging questions from this philosophy. If the system truly depends on our distraction and our compliance, what is the actual non-financial price of stillness in our world?
Yeah.
And could the opposite be true? Could stillness be the very thing that helps us see the patterns?
The price of stillness, what is it?
The immediate price of stillness is confrontation. It's uncomfortable. When you stop running all the things you were successfully outrunning, the financial pressures, the emotional liabilities, they catch up to you.
You have to actually face the reality of your situation.
You have to sit with the discomfort of realizing that maybe all your hard work is primarily serving someone else's balance sheet. It costs you the illusion of control that being busy provides.
So the price of stillness is bravery.
It's absolute bravery. But yes, to the second part of the question, the philosophy is unequivocal. The opposite is true. Stillness is the precondition for awareness.
It's only when you pause the churn that the patterns become visible.
Right. You can finally step outside that frantic cycle of earning and spending long enough to see the hidden ledger. You start to recognize what the source says, that every price we pay hides another one beneath it.
Stillness is what turns the abstract financial numbers back into moral accounting. It lets you actually calculate the opportunity cost, the creativity you lost, the emotional toll, the deferred life. And that moment of clarity, that's the first real act of reclamation. Okay. So as we start to synthesize all this, let's try to connect these powerful principles we've been unpacking. Time as currency, systems profiting from compliance, and awareness as the path to reclamation.
The synthesis really begins with what the source calls Principle 5. Awakening is the foundation.
Before you make a budget, before you look at debt consolidation, before any of the how-to stuff.
Before any of that, you must first simply see the cost. That's the awakening, the realization that every single financial choice you make has a hidden moral and temporal liability attached to it. That's the starting point.
And once you're awakened, once you see that cost, the next step is practical. It's about knowing your position.
This is where true freedom starts. You have to soberly identify which of the two positions you occupy in any given transaction. Am I the borrower of time here, or am I the lender of time?
And it's not about shame. It's just a strategic assessment. You have to know whose calendar your life is currently running on before you can change it.
Exactly. And once you have that awareness and you know your position, there's really only one sustainable path forward, and that's discipline. Which brings us to principle 4, peace compounds.
I love this one because this is where we get to the payoff. This is the ultimate yield of the entire credit edge philosophy.
It is. And the source states it so beautifully, so simply. Discipline is the only dividend. Each dollar not borrowed is a future hour saved.
That just gets right through the noise.
It completely removes the idea that you need some magic bullet, some stock that goes to the moon. The return here is generated by sustained, moment-by-moment discipline.
It's the choice to say no to the instant gratification. The choice to say no to taking on another future obligation.
And that disciplined no has an immediate, tangible return. It creates an unpromised future hour. An hour that belongs to you and you alone.
And the yield on those saved hours is peace. We tend to think of financial freedom as, yachts and early retirement.
Big, flashy things.
Right, but the source defines freedom much more quietly. It's found in how much of your future remains unpromised.
When you can look at your calendar for next month, next year, 5 years from now, and see that those hours are yours, so not legally obligated to a creditor, that is the ultimate definition of wealth in this philosophy. That is optionality.
And that's the moment the dividend of peace really starts to compound.
It does. It's just like interest compounding on capital. The peace you gain from one disciplined choice gives you more mental bandwidth. That clarity leads to better decisions. Better decisions yield more free time. And that accelerates your path to freedom exponentially.
It perfectly contrasts the cost and the yield. The price of debt is laid out so clearly. Life on someone else's calendar.
And the counterbalance, the reward, is just as clear. The return of discipline is hours reclaimed. That's the whole game. It's not about maximizing your network in dollars. It's about maximizing your sovereignty over your own schedule.
And finally, this philosophy takes it one step further. It shifts the focus to what we leave behind, to legacy.
And again, it redefines it. Legacy isn't just about money or property.
No, it's not about inheriting a bank account that might be, tied up in debt and confusion anyway. Legacy is awareness passed on. So the next generation knows the difference between necessity and trap.
That's how you break the cycle. That's how you stop the systemic compliance from just repeating itself generation after generation. You share this understanding.
The most profound inheritance you can give your children is the knowledge of how the system is designed.
So you empower them. You empower them to use debt as a tool only when absolutely necessary, and to never, ever let it become a trap they fall into because of distraction or desperation.
This has been a pretty sobering, but also incredibly empowering deep dive into the credit edge philosophy. It's a reflection on that quiet agreement we're all making with obligation every single day.
And if there's one core message to take away, it's that the system's design is stark. Debt counts on your distraction.
It really does. And your only true protection then is your awareness.
That's where peace comes from. Peace grows. It compounds when you start tracking the real cost, the temporal cost, with clear eyes and on your own terms.
We've really established that core idea from the source. Every promise we make without awareness becomes another quiet liability. And that time accounting is, at its heart, moral accounting.
It is.
So, as we close out this conversation, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to take with you, something for your own reflection.
If time accounting is truly moral accounting, then what are the non-financial promises or habits in your life that are borrowing your time and your peace right now?
It's a big question. Are you locked into social obligations purely out of a sense of passive compliance?
Are you sacrificing your stillness to a habit of just perpetual motion? Of being busy for the sake of being busy?
Take some time to sit with that cost. Track those hours.
Because the very first step to reclaiming your hours, to reclaiming your life, is to finally understand the quiet agreement you've made between your time and your obligations.
We thank you for spending your valuable time with us today.
Thanks for listening to The Credit Edge. Remember, your time matters. See you next episode.